Okay, let's get started. People will join eventually. It's 11 o'clock German time now. Hi, my name is Kevin Arnott. Welcome to today's webinar, Ensuring Business Continuity with Citrix ADC and Citrix Virtual Apps and Desktops. I will be your host and moderator today. I'm also happy to be here with my colleague Katalin, who will be guiding you through the insights we have on the world of Citrix and virtual apps and desktops. He will get to the agenda in a minute. Before we start the webinar today, I have some information for you. This webinar is being recorded, so you will be able to share it with your colleagues internally afterwards. We'll be sending out an email. If you have questions during the webinar, please feel free to use the Q&A question field down below. We have about an hour together today, and also we have about 15 minutes allocated for your questions at the end of the presentations, and we'll take our time to answer all those questions. Now, before we get started, Katalin, maybe you can show the next slide. Just to give you a short overview of Accesa, we are over 600 experts in Romania, Germany, and Switzerland with over 16 years of experience in the market. We have 19 competence centers where we work closely on various topics with our customer, and we have these dedicated teams to keep us on top of every topic. So now, without further ado, let me hand over to you, Katalin, and enjoy, everybody.
Okay, thank you, Kevin. Hi, hello everyone. My name is Cătălin Maltaș. I'm a Citrix infrastructure here at Accesa since 2019. I have more than 15-year experience in the field of IT, and my story with Citrix started 7 years ago. As Accesa is a Citrix partner, I have worked with most of the Citrix products, but my area of focus is Citrix Virtual Apps and Desktop and Citrix ADC. Today, we'll be dealing with the ways in which companies can ensure business continuity in the recent crisis. Then we'll discover one of the ways that Citrix can ensure business continuity in this context. And finally, we'll present one of our most recent Citrix implementation in the form of a case study. Questions will be answered later at the end of the webinar. First of all, let me, since we made acquaintance, please allow me to stop my video and go forward. Okay, so let's begin with the topic that is making everyone curious these days: business continuity. Every organization faces the possibility of major and minor disruptions, from planned events such as IT maintenance and office relocations to big emergencies such as snowstorms and epidemics, to unplanned events that strike completely without warning, such as earthquakes, terrorism, and fires. Traditionally, business continuity means planning failover and the high availability of mission-critical business system. Yet, this is only one part of the picture. The recent pandemic situation showed us that the way of working can and has changed. Now, it is relatively easy to get access to cloud services like Office 365, G Suite, or other popular SaaS applications. But many remote employees still need to securely connect to content or services that are not in the cloud. In the context of remote working, we have three options in hand. VPN. I'm sure every one of you has used and is using a VPN solution, which is a technology that allows users to connect to the corporate network from a remote location. VDI, short from Virtual Desktop Infrastructure, provides remote access to a virtual desktop or application provisioned from a centralized server. Or RDS, formerly known as Terminal Services in the past, technology from Microsoft. It allows users to log in from the internet to a centralized server. And from these three options, we'll be talking about the first two of them, VPN and VDI, because nowadays I'm not sure how many among the people are still using the RDS. Now let's see what is the difference between VPN and VDI. Are they that different? Well, the short answer is yes. If you mainly use Office products and SharePoint online, and you use the on-prem resources to check in some hour in application or something like this, then VPN is more than enough for you. But if you use ERP software, application servers, or databases in your on-prem, then the VPN is not enough for you. In this context, the VPN can be a choking point with all the data, users' data converging from all over the world to your data center entrance. Let's say that ERP software is SAP. Everybody knows that SAP does a lot of back and forward with your data. So in this case, it is important to have your data close to your desktops. Performance is a plus for VDI. VPNs are not scalable. It takes time to add capacity for VPN. Yeah. Also for VPN, it increases security risk and exposes your entire network. A complex configuration is needed for a VPN to perform access control to untrusted devices. And for a VPN, authorization takes place only once at the start. So after the initial authorization, the attackers roam free. From the security perspective, it's better to have a VDI environment than a VPN one, because VDI gives access only at the application layer. The worst case scenario would be if maybe your company doesn't have enough endpoints to deliver to its employees, and some of the employees are using their personal computer to connect to the private network using the VPN. This is when things get interesting. As Citrix is the star in today's webinar, it would be nice to see how many among you use Citrix. Okay. So all the answers are anonymous, so feel free to answer.
Also, we'll let it run throughout the webinar if people are joining.
Yes.
So yeah, you can, or should I just? We should also wait another minute. I have 24 seconds now, and then we can share the results.
Yes. Great. Perfect.
Okay. Or we can share it before. I think maybe it's better to just share it before the for the questions, and you can continue as of now.
Okay.
Perfect.
Perfect. Yeah. This one. Now we'll move to the main topic of our webinar, which is Citrix Virtual Apps and Desktop and Citrix ADC. And what can they do for your business? What is Citrix? Citrix provides server, application and desktop virtualization, networking, SaaS, and cloud computing technologies. And more than 100 million users across the globe use Citrix products. Citrix Virtual Apps and Desktop are a virtualization solution that gives IT control of virtual machines, applications, and security while providing access from any device. It's capable of publishing whether standalone applications as well as a whole desktop. Users have having the same experience no matter the device they launch their session from. Oh, 1 second, let me tap my laser pointer. It is able to publish the web and SaaS applications, Windows Server apps and desktops, virtual desktops, Linux apps and desktops, and remote PC access. The latter one is a very interesting feature from Citrix. In case you are not, you don't have the infrastructure prepared for a VDI solution, then you can make a quick deployment and using your on-prem devices, meaning endpoints or workstations. All you have to do is to install a small piece of software called Virtual Desktop Agent, short VDA, and then the user from external will have access remotely and securely to their workstation, having the same experience like they would be in the on-prem. Now we'll discuss about the components of a Citrix site. At the heart of the Citrix site stands the delivery controller. Its services are responsible for the link with the hypervisor, for the brokering the connections between users and their desktop and applications, and also the link with the SQL databases for logging and so on. Citrix Studio is a software that is usually installed on the delivery controller, but is not necessary. It can be installed on any workstation or virtual machines, and it is used for managing the Citrix sites. It gives users rights to applications, link to the hypervisor, create additional clones, and so on. At the front of the delivery controllers, that's the Citrix storefront, which is basically a web server responsible for user authentication and for the resource enumeration. Okay. Then we have the Citrix license server, and any Citrix session will need a Citrix license to be vended from this particular server. Of course, every Citrix site needs an SQL database for logging. Then we have the VDA, the small piece of software that we mentioned earlier when we talked about the remote PC access. And this piece of software is installed on any physical or virtual machine in the site that will be made available to the users. This software will enable the machine to register with the controller, and also will establish the connection between the machines and the user's endpoints. And finally, we have Citrix Director, which is a web-based tool used by the support and help desk team to monitor, troubleshoot, and perform support tasks in a Citrix environment. Now we'll be talking about Citrix ADC, short for Application Delivery Controller, formerly known as NetScaler. Is a networking device that accelerates websites and provides layer 4 and layer 7 traffic management, and it also offloads servers. The Citrix ADC comes in various formats, whether it is virtual, also known as VPX, physical appliance, also known as MPXs, or SDX, which is a multi-tenant platform, basically collection of multiple VPXs or virtual appliances. You may be wondering, where does the Citrix ADC fits in your environment, in your network? Usually, it stands between the clients and the backend servers, so that the requests from the client side and the responses from the backend server will pass through it. So the best practice is to have the Citrix ADC placed at the edge of your network in DMZ, isolating the application servers that will reside in your private network from the users that will come from the internet. The ADC can be deployed in 2 physical modes. One ARM mode or 2 ARM mode, depending of the number of the network interfaces that are linked to it. For these modes, there can be variations depending on the number of the subnets wished to be used. In a typical setup, virtual servers, which are IPs owned by the Citrix ADC, are used to pass the traffic from the clients to the application servers. Regarding licensing, for Citrix ADC, we have 3 editions: Standard, Advanced, and Premium. Standard being the entry edition, and Premium the high-end one. For VPXs or virtual appliances, there is a premium edition known as Express edition, which is it permits basic functions to be performed. Basically, all the standard edition except Citrix Gateway and layer 4 and layer 7 defenses. Depending on the licensing level, the ADC will have access from basic features like load balancing, content switching, SSL offloading, to more advanced features like App Expert or Web App Firewall, to advanced features like global server load balancing, which basically mean that you will have multiple sites with multiple ADCs present, and all these ADCs will load balance the load between each other. In a very common setup, the application or desktops published by the virtual apps and desktop will be made available to the external using Citrix ADC via SSL virtual server. Here you can see the Citrix ADC as the Citrix Gateway. The gateway is a feature present in the Citrix ADC and is available from the standard edition. Okay, now you can see the detailed communication flow. The user will connect to HTTPS page or the workspace app that is installed on its endpoint. The HTTPS page will be linked with the entrance of the Citrix ADC or Citrix Gateway. At this stage, takes the authentication. Now we are talking about simple authentication with the username and password, or 2FA, or multi-factor authentication solution. As a quote here, a recent study from Microsoft states that using multi-factor authentication blocks 99.9% of account hacks. So using multi-factor authentication nowadays, it's a must from my point of view. Based on the policies configured at the virtual server level, the HTTPS request will be securely forwarded from the Netscaler or Citrix ADC to the Citrix storefront. At this point, enumeration takes place. The user gets to choose the application or desktop he wants to be launched. After the user clicks or selects the desired resource, it is launched at the delivery controller's command from the VDA directly to the user endpoint. Now we'll see how all the information previously presented was applied in one of our recent Citrix implementation. We did a migration to Citrix Virtual Apps, Citrix ADC, and newer Windows Server edition for a German holding company. The client had an outdated Citrix environment, firstly implemented in 2013. The previous configuration included the Citrix XenApp 6.5, which is the previous name for XenApp is the previous name for virtual apps. Citrix rebranded its name in its products in 2018. Also, the client had the Windows Server 2008 R2 servers and Netscaler 11. Using deprecated Citrix products, as well as Windows Server 2008 R2 that has reached end of support in January 2020, a migration to Citrix Virtual Apps and newer Windows Server edition was needed. Here you can see the challenges that we faced for this implementation. And one of the main challenges encountered in this project was to ensure a minimal disruption during the actual migration. Here you can see our approach to this migration. Due to the Windows Server 2008 end of support, an actual migration from 6.5 to 7.15 was not advised. So we created a new environment from scratch, a new environment in which only the user groups and some of the GPOs were kept. So here you can see the external clients connecting to a HTTPS page. That HTTPS page, when it hit the firewall entrance at the client's data center, there was a firewall rule that forwards all the HTTPS requests coming at that particular IP that was forwarded to the Citrix ADC entrance or the SSL virtual server. At this stage, we are talking about the authentication steps taking place now. Okay, please allow me to jump to the next slide so you can better understand the authentication steps. Here we have the user, we have the firewall, then we have the Citrix ADC. After the user enters its username and password, the request is sent to the Radius server that was installed on the client's on-premise. The Radius server will ask the domain controller if the credentials are correct. In case the credentials are correct, then the authentication request is sent from the Radius server to the Azure using a plugin installed on this Radius server. And if all the conditions are met in Azure, then the Azure will send a request to the user mobile phone, like MFA request to the user cell phone in the form of a phone call, an SMS, or notification. Sorry. After the username approves the MFA request, it have the authentication is successful, and here you have access to the Citrix resources. Let me go back to the previous slide. For some of the users without rights in Azure, then we used only simple LDAP authentication, and for LDAP authentication we have a load balance group here. Here you can see only 2 delivery controller, but it could be 3, 4, no matter how many domain controllers here for authentication. And in front of this load balance group, it stands a virtual IP that is owned by the Citrix ADC, and no matter which one of these group members will fall, the users will still the service, the authentication service is still available without any interruption, and securely. And yeah, after the authentication steps, if they are performed, they are successful, the request is sent to the storefront servers. In here you can see as well the storefront server are load balanced as at the Citrix ADC level. So the same mechanism like for domain controllers happens here as well. The user will be receive a web page with all the after the authentication, we receive a web page with all the Citrix resources he has rights to have access to them. After the user selects one of the application, the request is sent to the delivery controllers, which are load balanced between each other. It's an internal mechanism. No matter how many delivery controller you have in a Citrix side. And here is decision has to be made. The delivery controller will contact the SQL server and see which one of the Citrix clones is most suitable to host the session from the client. After the decision is made, connection, a Citrix session is in place, and let's say the clone 2 is the happy one, that will receive the Citrix session. The VDA, or the small piece of software that I already told you before, will make the connection between that clone to the external and user endpoint. And every Citrix session needs a Citrix license that will be vended by the Citrix licensing server, as well as RDS CAL, because Citrix works hand in hand with RDS technology from Microsoft. So any session will consume a Citrix license and the RDS CAL client access license. Okay. Here you can see the technologies that we used and the results. At first, a POC environment was implemented with only username and password authentication. After successfully testing, the MFA was implemented only for a user group. The other user with no rights in Azure still had access with the username and password authentication. This was done at the Citrix ADC level using two different authentication policies. One only for LDAP authentication, and one with the dual authentication with the LDAP and radius authentication working together. We use the Citrix Virtual Apps 7.15 LTSR, which is a short for long-term service release. Citrix ADC 13. For as a provisioning technology, we use Citrix MCS, short for Machine Creation Services. VMware vCenter was the hypervisor used. Windows MPS server was used as the radius server for internal. NPS extension for Azure MFA is the plugin that made the link between the radius server to Azure. And we had a special request from the client to load balance the real IPs in front of the firewall with Azure Traffic Manager. The greatest results of this project was the enhanced system stability and future readiness. This means that the environment offers a better overall user experience with increased security. The company now benefits from a new and updated Citrix environment with the 2FA access. Here you can see we made a transition to newer Windows Server editions, and the Windows Server support was restored. The application pool was updated because we had a lot of legacy applications that was not working correctly or were outdated. And also regarding load balancing, DNS servers, LDAP, radius, and storefront servers were load balanced at the ADC levels, and that load balance server could be used for other internal needs in the company. Okay, now it's the time to ask the question. Kevin, do we have any questions so far?
Oh, I was on mute, sorry. So far as I can see, there is one question. With Citrix virtual apps, can Windows applications be used on devices that typically could not run them, including Mac, computers, mobile devices, and Google Chromebooks?
Okay. Let me. Okay, which can Windows application be used on devices? Can typically could not run them, including Mac computers. Oh yes, of course. You can launch any Citrix session from any device. Mac devices are supported. Mobile devices, Android, iPhone, Google Chromebooks are also supported. All you have to do is to install the application called Workspace app, Citrix Workspace app, and you can access the HTTPS, you can log in to the Citrix site using accessing the HTTPS page, or you can configure the Workspace app securely and remotely to access it from any of these devices. So far, including there is a Workspace app for Linux as well, Linux devices as well.
Perfect. I hope that answers the question. Thank you, Katalin. There's a second question. From a security perspective, how can we protect the user credentials? are those stored on systems or transferred across the network?
Okay, so any request or any communication between the Citrix, the client to the Citrix ADC, and from the ADC to Citrix storefront, and from the storefront to delivery controller is HTTPS communication. And also for authentication, we can use certificates, we can use smart cards. So all this communication is protected. So there are not not even a sniffer can see this traffic. It's encrypted. All this traffic is encrypted.
Perfect.
Does this answer the question? It's okay.
I assume so. I like the answer. I understood the answer. I'm not able to see who asked the question, so feel free to ask another question if it didn't answer it. From my perspective, can you create policies for specific groups of users, devices, or connection types?
Yes, of course.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let me go back to previous slide.
Sure.
One of the requests from this particular client was to have all the communication. All the clients will need to have a very secure and restricted environment. So the client drives were locked. So the user that will connect to the Citrix environment don't have access to, he will not see the client drives. The client drive will not be mapped, and not even the C or local drives on the Citrix clone they connected to were not mapped. So all the user could see was it's my document and the personal network link or share where he can save or load the documents. But the request in this case was for a particular user group. The client drives mapping should be disabled. So at the delivery controller in Citrix Studio, there was a particular policy, and that was filtered based on the user group, but we can filter it depending on IP address or a range of IPs or a particular user, or in case you can set a lot of filters. So if all the conditions are met, then for that particular user group, or if all the conditions are met for that policy, then that users will have the client drives mapping enabled. Yeah. Yeah. Does this answer your question?
Yes,
okay?
absolutely. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
So there's right now there's just another question came in. Perfect. What are the minimum PC requirements in order to run and use Citrix virtual apps? Are there any?
Yes. You mean the Citrix virtual apps. So to install the Citrix virtual apps, you will have to have a hypervisor first, and you will have a minimum of 3 servers, virtual servers. I mean, a server that will be used for delivery controller, storefront, and licensing, and a master image from which you will produce the clones and the clone. This is the minimum requirement. and the Citrix virtual apps environment will be functional, but only as a POC with a limitation in the number of users. Let's say this kind of environment is not prepared for a production. It's the best way to handle and to take care of high availability. Will have minimum 2 virtual server for delivery controller roles and for storefronts as well. Okay, let me go back to the slide. In here, you can see there are 2 delivery controllers, there are 2 storefronts, and okay, the Citrix licensing can be kept on one of the delivery controller, but the minimum required will be to have we recommend to use minimum of 5 of Windows servers. Is this okay?
I assume so.
Is the requirement? Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, for me, it explained the requirements for sure.
Yes, yeah, for minimum PC requirements, we can talk about minimum of 4 gigabytes or of RAM and minimum space in case you have an external SQL database, and 2 vCPU should be more than enough for start. Yeah.
Perfect. Maybe I can share the questionnaire for a second so you can see
yes.
What the results were. So 60% of all participants answered yes, and 40 answered no. There were no other VDI solutions used.
Great.
So yeah, thanks for sharing your insight on this. Let me close that. There's one more question open. Can 2FA be used when setting up the credentials for a user?
When setting up can 2FA be used when setting up the credential for a user? You mean, I think I need more details regarding this this question. 2-factor authentication, yes. Of course, 2-factor authentication. I mean, for usually that one is called 2FA. So you will have a username and password, and after the username and password are correct, then the 2-factor authentication will appear. So you can use, there are some special requests in case only MFA or a 2FA solution will be used without a username and password, or a smart card approach, or a certificate. So all the clients that will have the right to connect and will can connect to a Citrix site will have to have a certificate, a particular certificate installed on the username or the endpoint, client endpoint. Does this answer your question? Okay, 1 second.
I assume so. If there's no further
okay, perfect.
No further reply on this. Just always interests me. So oh, see, another question. Was it difficult to integrate the Citrix products with the Microsoft products MFA traffic manager?
No, it wasn't difficult. It was a first time for me, and it was a challenge. So here we talk about 2 different products. One is MFA, which is multi-factor authentication from Microsoft. This is the Microsoft standard, and you will need to have a user that will have rights in Azure to be in with the MFA enabled and to have MFA enforced. So this is one particular solution from Microsoft, and Traffic Manager is a different solution. Is a Azure Traffic Manager and is used for load balancing external IPs. Because the client had a personal affinity for Azure products, he said, yeah, we are using Azure, so it would be great to load balance the external IPs with the Azure Traffic Manager. So let's say this client had two ISPs. Let's say one is Telecom and another one is AT&T. Or is this present in Germany, Kevin? AT&T?
I think so. I think it's a
Yes.
common name, but
Yes.
I'm not sure if they're if they work in Germany.
Yes. And from every ISPs, the client will receive a range of real IPs at the entrance of the data center. So one IP from Telecom and one IP from AT&T will be linked with Azure Traffic Manager. So will be load balanced in case the telecom line will fall, then Azure Traffic Manager will take care of the load balancing. Yeah, load balancing the external lines. And yeah, the client will not receive any. The client's external clients will not see any difference if it's linked to Telecom or AT&T. Like load balancing in case of okay, let me 1 second in here. Like the ADC takes care of load balancing here for domain controllers and for storefronts. As well, Azure can load balance. Azure Traffic Manager can load balance the IP from the entrance. We are talking in here at the entrance of the firewall. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Guess.
Yeah, that answers the integration question of the products.
Yeah.
For me, it's always interesting. You talked about the project with one of our customers. How did that come to happen? What was the main need, and how did our partnership come to be?
Well, the client had the initial implementation in 2013, and just it was functional, but no one take really good care of it. So it was really outdated. As I mentioned, the ZenApp 6.5 was outdated, and the ZenApp 6.5 was linked to Windows Server 2008 R2. So when the Windows Server 2008 R2 reached its end of support, then as Citrix ZenApp 6.5 reached its end of support. So they had no support for Windows servers used in that environment. They had no support for Citrix servers used in that environment, and
so it was time to update.
It was a very urgent situation. So yeah, and of course, for security they needed 2FA solution as well.
Excellent. Thank you for that answer. Also, there's another answer that question that just came in. If a developer needs to open different sessions to, I guess, production development assurance environments, will these count as separate Citrix licenses, or can you so per user licensing with multiple sessions at no additional cost?
Yes. So any user session, no matter how many desktops or application he opens will be counted as one Citrix license. Yeah, in here we have, regarding Citrix licenses, we have two licensing model. Okay, I see that Razvan has raised hand.
Yeah, you could.
Could you please, yeah, unmute.
Yeah.
Razvan.
There we go.
Yeah, thank you. That was my question. I wanted to clarify. So if it opens multiple sessions to different OSs or different production environments that are running on different machines, it's still counted as one Citrix license, right?
Yes, yes.
Okay, that was my question, and sorry about the typo or the correct stuff.
No
worries.
no, no.
Murphy's Law when you're writing something. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, of course.
Excellent.
Thank you for the question.
Thanks. Okay. I can't see any other questions.
Yes.
So if anybody watching this webinar, Catalin, wants to get in contact with us, who do they reach out to? How does it work getting in contact with us? So
If he has any technical issues, they can contact me. If they want, we can email me on catalin.magdash@accesa.eu. And I will redirect on all the other requests to my colleagues, and they will have more knowledge regarding the business and yeah. For
excellent.
technical issues, and everyone can contact me,
Yeah.
and be able to. Yeah.
For any other inquiries, please feel free, to reach out to Catalin or to myself. And as Catalin said, I would also redirect it to the right people. We're a bit early. It's 11:53 now. We have another 7 minutes left. So if any other questions are out there, feel free to put them out there now. Other than that, we can stay on. If there's anything you want to add to your presentation, you can do it now. Otherwise, I think we could slowly close the session. I'll stay on for a bit longer, but
Yeah, I'll stay on as well. Okay.
a bit longer. But thank you everybody for joining today. Have a nice week, and hope to see you at the next webinar.
Thank you everyone. Thank you for the attention and for your time.
Perfect.
And have a nice day.
You too. Thanks, Catalin.
Okay.